everyone. Welcome to the JEMS report. My name is Jeff Frankel, and I am the managing editor of JEMS. This is episode 2 of 2, and we're talking about mental health. If you missed the first episode, you'll probably want to go back and watch the first one first, but you do you. If you want to watch this first, that's fine too. Last time we talked about a survey on mental health, and this time we're talking about what we can do to address it. As we all know, mental health is an important issue in EMS and all first responder agencies. So I'm glad we're talking today with Alanna Badgley and Bonnie Eckman. Now, before we get started real quick, I just want to say Alanna wrote an article for us a few months back called Normal for Us, Addressing Mental Health Needs for EMS Professionals. That article is linked below in the comments, and you can also find the link to study there as well. Now, I want to introduce, let Bonnie introduce herself. Well, that's a tongue twister. Hi, Bonnie. How are you? Okay.
Oh, now I feel much better about going, so I think you did that just for me.
I think so.
So my name is Bonnie Eckman. My background is in occupational therapy. And in the last 7 to 10 years, I've really specialized in sensory modulation for first responders. I work at a specific first responders program for treatment and mental health called After Action. And there I have, we have specific first responder only programs, but a big part of that is learning that self-regulation through sensory modulation, because that's something you can take home with you and will hopefully last whether you're on or off the job.
Alanna, how about you?
Hi, I'm Alanna Badgley. I am a paramedic, and I've been in the field of EMS for 15 years. I am the president of the International Association of EMTs and Paramedics Local 20, which is based in the Hudson Valley in New York and represents about 900 active duty EMS professionals and communications dispatchers. I am also on the National Executive Board of the National Association of Government Employees and a national representative for IAEP. So I have a few hats, and I am really excited about this conversation because I met Bonnie last year when IAP, when we were invited to do a tour of the facilities and the programs at After Action. And Bonnie took us into one of her sensory rooms that they have there. And the experience I had of Bonnie explaining to me sensory modulation, as well as the experience I had in the room, changed me a little bit. I wasn't there for my own therapy, but I felt like I got a little bit of it, which was pretty awesome. So I'm really excited for her to get to share a little bit more with this community about what she does.
Great segue. Bonnie, for those who aren't familiar, what is sensory modulation therapy, and how does it work?
Yeah, so sensory modulation is part of self-regulation. What it does is it uses all of your 8 senses to help regulate your nervous system. And one of the things that is so difficult for first responders to get help in mental health with is if your nervous system's activated. People call it triggered. I don't love that word. I find that offensive, like something you can pull or not pull. It's just your nervous system is activated, right? Which means that that is being turned on and responding without real thought. And so even for people who are going to get therapy, which is great, or going to treatment, which is great, if your nervous system's activated, you're not going to be able to think clearly through that. It's not going to retain as well. So sensory modulation uses the 8 senses to help calm your nervous system so that you can get back to actually thought. So people say mind over matter a lot. And that makes me laugh, because if you're not in the right mindset, it doesn't matter. And so if you take the 8 senses, right, sight, sound, smell, touch, taste, there's 3 more, and I know most people don't know what those are, but they are part of the same survival system. So there's vestibular, proprioception, and interoception, which all create that that survival piece, right? And when your survival piece is turned on, that nervous system's turned on, you aren't thinking clearly, hence all the training that first responders have, right? It's second nature. They don't have to think about it a lot. But when you're going to get help for mental health, how do you think through, talk through, and feel through something if your nervous system is in fight or flight?
And tell me, how is this effective for medics and other first responders?
Yeah, it's especially important for medics and first responders, military also. Anyone who has had training on how to basically override their nervous system. If you're going into an emergency system or emergency situation, your survival part of your brain's like, yeah, don't run into that building. And your training's like, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and run into that building. And because of that, you have this mind-body disconnect. And so because you are in this fight or flight or hypervigilance type of state, that makes it really hard for you to think or regulate and have your mind and body on the same page. So sensory modulation is good for all humans. Like if you're a human, sensory modulation is helpful because sensory is one of the only things that speaks to that survival part. So, you know, when you have something happen and you think it through, if a bear was chasing you and I said, it's fine, give it a hug, your survival system's probably not going to let you do that. Also, if you're running from that bear and you start thinking like, I wonder if I should climb a tree, probably not going to allow you to do that either. And that's what happens when your nervous system is activated, is it relies on that training and that non-thought process, which then relates into other parts of your life. Really hard to go home and talk with your family and be engaged and be present when your nervous system is activated. And learning to turn that off is really hard. We think all the time that it's just think it through. Oh, that wasn't a life-threatening situation, I'm fine. But that's the logic part of your brain. Your survival part of your brain's going with better safe than sorry, and I'm going to stay activated. If we can take all of your senses and really regulate them, right? But it's basically telling that survival part how to process information. So if you were in you're in a room, it's really important for first responders, I'm going to go off this a little bit, and military to have it be fully submersive. Because their system is so activated, a little bit of sensory modulation will help. But if you're looking at trying to change how you respond to sensory input, having it be submersive is very important because that way it creates the whole brain on the same page. So if you go into a space that has low lighting, blue lights, maybe has some white noise or birds or rain, you have a favorite smell, maybe there's lavender or vanilla, you're sitting in a rocking chair or swing, which is creating that repetitive slow movement of vestibular, and you have we use high chews often, which is just a candy that produces a lot of saliva, but also is very hard to chew. And all of that together starts telling that survival part of your brain that it's reverse engineering. I cannot be in an emergency fight or flight situation and have my sensory process this information at the same time.
Now, Alanna, I know you told me off camera that you've seen the benefits of this before. How so?
Yeah, so through our partnership with After Action, some of our members who, have been struggling have been able to go to their programs and have reported back to us that they've had really good experiences, in particular with the sensory room. And I experienced it myself just in, our tour. So, you're entering into this new space where every single one of your senses going to be activated, and so Bonnie was just describing that, but right. So you're going to have visual cues, things that you're looking at that are stimulating to your vision. And, you're probably going to have something to feel like. Right now, I've been hiding it, but I have a little bit of a fidget toy going on just to kind of keep that feeling sense activated. You're hearing something, whether it be thunderstorms or, something that's comfortable for you without, sending you more active. But what happens is you're getting all of this external stimulus, and what my experience was I started to calm down and I didn't even know I was stressed out. I thought like I didn't think I was in fight or flight. I didn't think I was activated. But as a first responder, we're often activated even in our rest, right? And so even when we think we're chilling, we're not. And so sometimes what happens is if we're in a space that's totally open, that's totally empty, white space, fluorescent lights, and not much going on, dare I say the Q word, and like there's reasons why we're triggered by, or I shouldn't say triggered, I know Bonnie doesn't like that word, but why we're activated by those things is because when we're in a low sensory, our bodies are saying, wait a second, this isn't right. This isn't normal. Normal is being activated, being in fight or flight. So that actually causes us a lot of stress. So normal things like, for instance, mindfulness, just breathe, just release everything, get rid of all the sensory, get rid of everything, typically does not work for first responders. I've struggled with that myself. To just be able to eliminate was hard for me, and it didn't seem to work as well as being in a space that was very stimulating. Very stimulating, felt way calmer for me. And that's the feedback I've gotten from other people that have experienced it, is that giving your body something to be stimulated by is allowing it to relax, to get that other fight or flight mechanism to calm down by giving it something else to focus on. And that was my experience. And it just felt so calm. I was just like, oh, I feel great. I didn't want to leave the room at all. And then I even noticed when I came home that I had accidentally, inadvertently done a lot of that work inside of my house without realizing it. I mean, you can see behind me, this is one wall. I have a lot of things to look at because I like looking at things and colors, and a lot of the colored lights in my house, because those things just made me feel good. And I didn't know why until I met Bonnie.
Interesting. Now, Bonnie, is that a typical thing? Like, they don't know that have this problem, and then until they talk it out more? The lights, and the stimulation.
Yeah, and I love how Alanna explained it. That's such a great real use of it and how that feels. So often when we're talking about mental health, it's that lack of input, like go to a quiet space and go sit. And your brain is so used to processing a lot of information, it's counterproductive. Your brain starts to worry that that's not your normal. And so it actually starts to create more stress and anxiety just by sitting and being quiet a lot of times. So if we add the light and the sounds and the smell and taste, touch, and movement, your brain has a lot to process, but everything that it's processing is telling the survival brain that you are in a comfortable space. So one of my favorite things, and Alanna can talk about this also, but when I'm working with first responders and we're in the sensory room, often they'll say, I don't know how long I can do therapy or just sit and talk, which is absolutely fair. So we'll do sensory modulation, right? We'll go through this, kind of feels like an eye exam. Does it feel better with this color? Does it feel better with this color? Do you want more sound? Do you want less sound? And create a space for them that is calming. And my favorite part is when we go to leave after a normal hour session. I'll ask them, I'm like, so how do you feel like you did in that 15, 20 minutes? And they're like, that was already 15, 20 minutes? And just really excited that they were able just to stay at a spot and be in a moment for 15, 20 minutes. And then just for fun, I'm like, well, that was an hour and 15, but absolutely. So like Alanna said, wanting to stay in there. Once your nervous system is regulated, you can tell the difference between that. And that's the other piece, because life is so chaotic and hectic and just busy for first responders, it becomes your norm. So you won't notice that you're activated until there's a way to unactivate. And one of the easiest, quickest ways to unactivate is to tell your nervous system how to process the space you're in that moment. So the more things you add to that are your preferences, the easier it's going to be for you to be in that moment and feel that difference.
Now, Bonnie, what will it take to make this kind of therapy available across departments around the nation?
Yeah, so that is a goal I've had of mine for a long time. because I feel like it's one of those things that can be easily implemented without a huge cost. And it gives really the first responder back their ability to do it themselves. First responders are not great at asking for help, and they're not great at receiving help, and they're not great at saying something is wrong, which makes sense because their comparison piece is off. If you've seen and been through a lot of, we don't even say traumatic, but just dramatic situations, all of a sudden what you're feeling doesn't feel that dramatic, right? So to get to a point where they're like, okay, I might need something is already an uncomfortable space. Being able to put sensory rooms and add sensory modulation, occupational therapists in departments, that would be probably the biggest change. And again, it comes from the top down, right? We're trying to help the people who are out doing stuff, but unfortunately, a lot of that has to still go through budget and layers and layers of red tape. So if you're talking on a small level, I think just getting out that sensory modulation can be helpful, and looking at what you can do in your own department and even in your house. It's a great thing. Like, I'm such a huge fan of transition time. So when you leave work, your body takes 15 to 20 minutes to acclimate to anything. When you're done with whatever shift you're on, taking that 20 minutes to check in and just have the right level of input. Again, probably not no input. That's really boring. But the right level of input helps you be able to transition. So I think if even something as simplistic as that is, if you had a paid 20 minutes by the end of your break that was still being paid, where you had time to self-regulate and use sensory modulation, I think that would be a huge change for families and first responders. Alanna, what do you think would have to happen to make this
Yeah. Well, I mean, so yes, the union leader in me loves the idea of paid sensory modulation at the end of a shift. That sounds fantastic. We'll talk about that later, and get some data to get that into the next contract. But beyond that, I know that you say there's cost, and obviously cost is something that is a struggle for EMS nationwide, no matter what. But the reality, I think, is that converting a small closet or a crew room to have some of the things that you need to be able to modulate at a station or in your home is not super expensive comparatively to, a brand new radio costs the department $25,000, right? Like, really good. We're talking about to create a sensory modulation room. I mean, Bonnie, what's the budget on that?
You could create your own for $1,500 really, really well, right?
Yeah.
We had a $25,000 sensory room. I mean, that's some Disneyland stuff right there.
Right. And if you even want to scale that down, I'm certain you could get, from just what I've done around my house, you go to Lowe's, you can change out your bulbs. For the blue bulbs, it's $5 for the bulb. Right. We're not talking about a large expense. And, you can go on YouTube and find, sounds and things that you can listen to often for free. You may have to listen to an ad or two, but, without doing too much, and, fidget toys, things like that, just to stimulate your hands, not super expensive things. I mean, if you want to go all out, and like you said, the Disneyland version of a sensory room, certainly, but there's ways to do this on a budget, certainly. And I would love to see every agency, every, station around the country just put in a room like this and give space for people to be able to, at the end of their shift or even a mid shift, if they have the downtime, to be able to regulate their body right there, then and there, and feel that level of calm. And it's not the Q word, like you're hearing things. And so like, we really get, I mean, I'm off duty right now. I'm not saying the word because there might be people on duty right now, and I'm not going to say the word to bother anyone. But truly, there's a few reasons why we're so sensitive to that word. And it's, I think, just as much as it is superstition and it's a jinx, I think it's also because we don't like the feeling of being in a space that's not got a lot going on. So you can give your station a little bit more stimulus.
Yeah, and you're right. And a lot of like the acupuncture rings are one of my favorite. Having something as simplistic as a warhead candy in your ambulance, in your space, can be really helpful. The warhead is not magic, but it is overwhelming sensory wise. And if you have a repetitive thought or you're feeling overstimulated, a warhead can be a really quick, or anything really sour, right, can be a really quick pause to those thoughts. So you're right, there's a lot of things that can be done that are inexpensive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And for those watching, this is the ring that Bonnie was talking about, and you roll it up and down your finger, and it feels really great.
Interesting. I like that. I gotta check that out.
Yeah.
I like that.
So.
Great. Well, Bonnie, Alanna, thank you so much for joining us today. It seems work needs to be done, but we're identified several solutions to help providers with their mental health. Hopefully, we can keep this convo going. Thanks again to our audience for joining us today. Be sure to share this episode with your colleagues, and we will see you all again soon.